Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the show. We're doing the BKFC 6 recap with the one and only Jeff Houston, the legendary Stitch over here via phone, Mr. Nick Portella, and myself. Guys, I guess let's just roll right into it. I just start from the bottom. Let's work our way up. Uh, let's see. We had the Facebook prelims. We had Mr. God, please help me, Chris Buffiel. Is that right, Mr. Houston?
Boful.
Bofos. Chris Bofo defeats Jared Hayes via KO round three. What did you gentlemen think of that match?
There was some good back and forth that actually was taking place on that one. That one really could have gone either way, but Chris started his pace,
Yeah.
and I think that that's a big determining factor in this sport is the pace that you push because it's a pace unlike any other combat sport on the planet, and the one who pushes the pace fast and aggressive and is able to protect their face on top of that is going to be the one who's probably going to have more W's in their win column.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that, like you said, it was a good back and forth. Wasn't it at one point? Didn't they both take some pretty heavy shots to each other at one point? Am I
They
thinking of the
both
right
got
fight? They
yeah,
both
they
got their
both
bells
got
rung pretty good, right? Before he got KO'd? Yeah.
they both
No, that
got
was a good
knocked
fight.
down. They
Yeah,
both got up.
yeah, 100%. Then we had Abby versus Travis Thompson, where Abby took it by unanimous decision. Hell of a fight. Hell of a
Yeah.
fight. And I'm thinking if Shof and Lane didn't win Fight of the Night, I feel like this was a strong, right, pretty close right behind it.
I'm extremely selfish with that fight because I would love nothing more than to see it again,
Yeah.
them run it back. But I feel like the next step for Abby is probably another shot at Bedford. That's kind of what I think it would be. But selfish me wants to see them run it back.
Mm.
What do you think about that, Stitch?
Well, I like that also. Number one, Johnny Bedford is a tough fighter, but Abby did a great job. Literally outboxed Travis. And, I expected that type of Jason Knight, Arnold Lobov type of fight, but got to give Abby some credit, man. He really took him to school. And you're talking about that first guy that got knocked out. I get up to him, and the doctors, we're down on our knees working on him.
Yeah.
And I look at him and I say, okay, who am I? And he looks at me and he smiles and goes, "You're Stitch." So the doctors start laughing. I say, he's okay. So that's one of the ways that we determine, how a fighter responds is how he acts after he gets knocked out. And at that time, he passed the green light.
Stitch, do you think Abby and maybe a rematch between Abby and Reggie, since Abby won and Reggie lost, or maybe even Abby, I guess Abby and Johnny Bedford. I mean, what's the right fight to make after BKFC 6?
Well, I think either one would be good. Reggie, I was talking to him before the fight that I thought on the scale of all the fighters that are on the bare knuckle fighting list, that skill wise, boxing wise, he had the best boxing skills there. But Johnny Bedford kind of took that away from him. Calling him into the center of the ring, and Dave Feldman always gives the fighters a briefing and says, if you guys fight in that center ring, in the ring, you guys get a bonus.
Yeah.
And of course, money talks, and that's what Johnny Bedford did. But I think in doing that, he got Ronnie out of his game plan, and ended up being a tremendous fight for Johnny Bedford.
Although one nice notable thing is all the people in the tournament that were looking to get redemption from a loss, the stage is really set. Abby goes back to Bedford, Travis goes back to Reggie,
Yeah.
and that's 2, 3, 4 fights in the making moving forward in that little like triangle of people right there. It's good. That division's
Yeah, well, just the inventory, the amount of guys fighting for each division is limited right now. But I think, after you saw Paula Malignaggi fight, you'll see more MMA guys and boxers coming into the mix. So right now you got a small pool of fighters fighting for the championships, and either one of them are capable of winning the title.
yeah, for sure.
Well, not only that, a big thing that I like about the redemption factor, especially in bare knuckle, is because that this is considered a new sport by, mostly everybody. The idea of redemption really works for me because of the fact that we're building characters. We're building characters in that, and this gives, the return bare knuckle fans to see the redemption factors that are going to be in place with these rematches. That is really going to get them more tested, because I think the key point in bare knuckle fighting championships is just getting the more bare knuckle fights that you can, getting yourself seasoned, and that's what's going to end up giving you the edge, in my opinion, especially with all the celebrity fighters that we're going to continue to bring in from the boxing side, from the MMA side. They're not going to be looking lightly at our seasoned bare knuckle fighters, because they know that they've been battle tested. They've been out there. They've been in the squared circle. They've done the 5 2-minute rounds, and they push the pace. So I think the redemption factor and rematches are really going to help with character development for BKFC.
No,
I think you're 100% right. What's up, Jeff? First of all, how you doing, my man?
Stitch, are you kidding? Every day is one step closer to the beach, brother.
Yeah, that's right. But Jeff is right. And that's the thing about it with the small pool of fighters that we have on the list right now. They're all capable of fighting each other, and you get that round robin. But in doing that, you're also building characters, and I think that's the main thing that Dave Feldman wants to create is have fighters that have names so people recognize them, and I think he's doing a good job right now with that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Agree with both you gentlemen. There's really nothing to add to that. Agree with both you gentlemen.
Yeah.
Let's jump right into the main card. David Mundell defeats Drew Lipton, first round TKO. What do you guys think about that?
I think we got ourselves a brand new bare knuckle fighter in the redneck. Yeah. He took to it like a fish to water.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with that. I have nothing but good things to say about Drew, but David, it's almost like that he had the blueprint of how to push a bare knuckle fight, Volume 1, and saw it all the way through. I mean, his game plan was exactly what David is looking for, what David Feldman is looking for.
Stitch, I got a question about that Stitch. Drew Lipton, he said on social media that he was absolutely fine. He said he wasn't wobbly, he wasn't rocked, he was absolutely fine. Did you notice? I mean, did he look rocked to you? Did he look like he knew where he was after that fight?
Well, no, he responded pretty well.
Okay.
But knockout's a knockout, and all you got to do is take 2-3 seconds out of what is normal in a fighting thing to be considered a knockout. So he was okay with that. But yeah, man, the redneck, and just with a name like the redneck, that's something I remember him as. I've always said, these fighters, whether you're a boxer or MMA fighter, to cross that line into bare knuckle fights on the mental game is probably the hardest thing that they have to accomplish, and it takes a whole lot of balls, man, to make that move.
Yeah. Well, there isn't much left to say that you haven't said, but I would like to see both of them again. I know Drew's 0-2, but he loses a fight and he's like, time to get ready for the next one. So I think he is exactly, I don't really count everything about wins and losses here. Like, he's a guy that wants to go out. He wants to fight. He wants to perform. He's going to move forward.
Yeah.
I think he's great for the sport no matter how the outcome was.
I don't think it really has to do with wins or losses when it comes to bare knuckle. It's really about not repeating the same mistake.
Right.
That happened in previous fights, because unfortunately, in other combat sports, you definitely come across fighters that get caught in these repeat mistakes. And I think in bare knuckle, it's really good to take accountability of these mistakes and kind of factor that in as an additional training factor into their next camp. So as long as they're not repeating mistakes, I think they'll be fine, because it's just about getting caught the same way over and over again that you realize that this wheel isn't turning the way it's supposed to.
Right. Plus, the mistakes hurt more in bare knuckle.
Oh yeah.
I'm feeling like the mistakes hurt a bit more.
Jim Ellers defeats Elvin Brito via KO in 45 seconds of the first round. Absolutely vicious.
I was shocked because Elvin Brito just won over Harris Stevenson. They went to the 5th round. It was a good war. Unfortunately, Harris got caught. These things happen. I was shocked. I mean, Jim came in with a bunch of UFC experience, and not that it's the same sport, but maybe he was a little better adapted to the big lights and the pay-per-view and all the stuff. We were talking to his significant other in the stands, and she said this is nice for him because he's fighting, and it's not the pressure that you have. Like the UFC, they give you a number, and if you lose, they cut your number.
Right.
These guys come out here, and they just have to worry about the fight. And
he pushed the pace. He pushed the pace.
Yeah.
He pushed the pace. I mean, and I'm going to sound like a broken record saying that over and over again, but that really is one of the key factors on winning fights in bare knuckle, and that's pushing that pace and keeping that fight inside the line area, inside the circle, inside the squared circle. As long as you keep it inside that close quarters combat, you're going to win more fights because that's the way that this sport is designed.
Yeah.
You know what? Great points. And like I said, the same with, like I said, the other guy with David Mundell, and same with Jim Allers. Same with Drew Lipton. I mean, these guys, win or loss, these guys come forward. These guys put the pressure on. Win or lose, these guys are going to come forward. And I think that's something, like you said, like that Dave Feldman looks for. It's not so much the win or loss record. It's the fact that these guys are there to fight. They're not there to dance around. They're not there to, try to win by points. They're there to win a fight. And, man, Jim Ellers, he delivered. If anybody on the card delivered, he delivered. Joe,
you know what, though?
Go ahead.
Wait, real quick. Like he said about pushing the pace in that inner circle, there's a dozen guys on this card that the ring could just be that middle circle, and they'd be okay.
Yeah.
They'd show up. Like, we'll just stand in this little spot, and somebody will go.
100%.
I love it.
Well, maybe we'll have future fights where we'll call it the phone booth. And they just sit in there and go at it toe-to-toe, and Big Jeff right there could announce it as, ladies and gentlemen, we got fights in the phone booth.
There you
go.
I will not be in the phone booth to announce it. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Now, but you guys are right. The pattern of fighting really depends on the aggressiveness of a fighter with technique. And, going out there first and being aggressive could change the whole game plan for any fight.
Next fight on the lineup, we had Joe Riggs and Wilbur Barros. They fought to a draw, 47-47. What'd you guys think?
It was tough,
I worked
man.
with Barros. Yeah, I worked with Barros, and I'm thinking, that guy's a great jiu-jitsu guy, but he can't box at all. I think once, and that's the thing with this bare-knuckle fights. You can't start off with power right hands because you're going to leave yourself wide open, and that's what was happening to him. His boxing skills were not as good as they need to be for him to continue doing what he does. Joe Riggs is a warrior from get-go. I worked with him many years in the UFC, and obviously I did his fight in Cancun. And, he's gutsy, but, I always say you could beat anything, but you can't beat time. And, he might be getting close to that point.
It was close, man. Just from listening to people, you heard half the people saying, I think Riggs edged it out. Then you heard the other half saying, I think Barros edged it out because he scored a knockdown. I don't know. They were swinging all over the place. It was really it would be hard to judge off seeing it once, with the exception of being a judge when you're just counting punches. But again, another set of guys that it would not be bad to see them back.
Oh no, I think they'd actually have a great second fight, and I definitely think because of the fact that it was left unfinished, that it would be that much better of a second fight because then they have something to prove. Because the age-old saying, never leave the fight in the hands of the judges. Yeah. So in that situation, I think that they'd probably be willing to be a little bit more, throw that caution to the wind, and really get one of those awesome stand and bang sessions, which everybody is really starting to associate bare knuckle fighting championship with. It's a tough call. I mean, with the exception of the fighters and the referee, the judge's seat, that's one of the hardest jobs out there. And seldom a day goes by that, some combat sports judge isn't raked over the coals for whatever decision they render. So it's just not an easy situation in there. Could it have gone maybe, Joe Riggs with a split decision? Sure. Could it have been Bajos with the split decision? Absolutely. It really could have gone either way. So, hats off to the judges for doing their job. Nobody likes a unanimous draw, but that's just the card we were dealt.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of, and maybe even something to set Bare Knuckle FC further apart from other combat sports? When there is a draw situation, what about something like a sudden death round to eliminate that draw and have a clear winner? And maybe like whoever wins that round wins the fight.
You know what? I actually did a little bit of more extensive research on the scoring because I was curious. Obviously, for the main event, I wanted to go back and watch it. And according to the rules, the only reason I think a sudden draw round wouldn't work is because you don't have to score around 10-9. It's clear in the rules if they can't make a decision, they can score it at 10-10, and you might have a sudden draw that goes another entire fight. What's the way some of these guys go at it? You know what I mean? I don't know.
I don't think it would swing with the athletic commissions, unfortunately, because you guys know that I work for Road FC
Yes.
over there in Korea. Well, we have a situation like that with our main event title fights, where we go 3 5-minute rounds with one additional round if necessary, if it happens to come to a draw, so that way we can have a clear winner for a championship. But it's a lot easier to push, the worldwide, I guess you could say, MMA rules, abroad as it is when it comes to a state athletic commission stateside. So, I mean, as good an idea as I think that is, because it definitely leaves things finished rather than unfinished, I don't think it would swing with most athletic commissions, unfortunately.
No.
Interesting. I like it. I think, I think that brings up a very good point, and once again, I think, that's something that Dave Feldman's looking for is to be different than everybody, yet, be the same. But in that, I think, if he offered these guys, if it ends up being a draw, you guys go one more round, you get paid X amount of money, and I like the idea. Who's the one that brought it up? Jeff?
Josh.
No, Josh had that one.
Good idea, man.
I mean, I don't know if it's a super original idea, but I just think it's interesting. I think it's just something, like you said, to set Bare Knuckle FC apart that much more, because, nobody likes a draw. I mean, there are very few situations where people are like, oh, a draw, cool, that was awesome. I mean, most people don't like a draw.
The idea is great. I love the idea. It's just put into practice via state athletic commissions of how bureaucratic every little rule can be at one point. They'd have to go through like focus groups and support groups. I mean, it'd literally have to go through so many tiers and stages before it would even go into practice. And that's the only issue that I see, once again, with an additional round, is because it would just be something that would be kind of a hot button for most athletic commissions. But if they could approve it, I say go for it. But that's the only road bump I think you'd come across.
Well, educate people on that. Educate me on that, because as far as like state commissions and stuff like that, I guess I don't get me wrong. Like, I understand their commissions and their rule sets and stuff like that, but in terms of trying to implement something like that, it's not. It's really not as easy as just saying Dave going, "Hey guys, this is what we're doing from now on." It's not like that.
Depends on the athletic commission.
Okay, so it would depend on the individual state, is what you're saying.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, everything like that has to go through through the boards. Usually it's the governing states, and then, because the commissions are represented by the state. Okay. So, it has to go through attorneys and all that stuff and liabilities and what have you not. But I think that's something that's pretty doable.
Okay. Interesting. Joey Beltran defeats Jamie Campbell via KO. Vicious. It was like, I don't know, it looked like, what were we saying, Nick? It looked like whack-a-mole in there for a second. It looked like he was playing some whack-a-mole.
Yeah. Joey Beltran's a scary dude. He's a nice guy, but I don't know how excited I would be to stand across from him.
He was ready for this fight. That's just all there is to it. He was ready for this fight. He was in there with a bigger opponent, but he was also in there with somebody who is nowhere near battle tested. I mean, hats off to Jamie Campbell for stepping in there against somebody who had 3 bare knuckle fights to his one, and not only that, was a tenured UFC and Bellator veteran and went through that bloody war at BKFC 1 with Tony Lopez.
Yeah.
Hey, like I said, hats off to him, but I had kind of called that one actually ahead of time because I figured that Joey was just going to be in there to prove a point, and that is that he is one of the premier heavyweight fighters of BKFC.
And not for nothing, he came in looking trim, man. He was ready.
242 pounds. It's the lightest I've seen him in quite some time, actually.
Yeah.
He ate all week long. No problems.
Yeah, Joey, he's a horse. Joey is, if you're going to do the face of bare knuckle fighting, he's definitely one of the candidates. And show you how important it is. My job with these guys is Joey contacted me before the fights and asked if I was going to be in his corner. So little things like that make a big difference. But he is a bleeder. He's a cut man's dream. And unfortunately on that one, I did work his corner, but he didn't get cut. So kudos to him on that.
Maybe the cuts were scared because Stitch was in the corner. They're like, you know what? He's just going to fix it anyway. Let's just keep it off the grid.
So this is it's like one of those Chuck Norris things, It's like one of those Chuck Norris things. So Stitch is now going to be kind of, I guess you could say, the Chuck Norris standard that the cuts are actually afraid of him now, right?
Well, the Chuck Norris things are true. The Chuck Norris things are true.
All of
them. That's all of them. Every single one.
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
Julian Lane defeats Tom Shoaf via unanimous decision. I'll tell you what.
Bang, bro.
Fight of the night.
Fight of the night. Let me tell you what. That was a tough one because I like both those guys a lot. We've spent a lot of time with both of them, and God Almighty, man, Julian came out strong. I was worried that Julian was gonna gas out, in the early rounds because he was coming throwing some hard shots. Then he kind of backed off, and Tom does what he did best. He was boxing. He was doing what he said he was going to do. He was boxing his ears off for a few rounds. He really was. Then Julian really started to come back in the later rounds. But man, that was an awesome fight.
Well, look at Tom Shoaf. But look at Tom Shoaf keeping his cool under fire.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, seriously, yes. I thought he was going to get knocked out the first round the way that they were going.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like round number 2, it was like baptism under fire for him. And he just said, something, it's time for me to push the pace back. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And I was, like I said, I mean, Tom Shoaf is another guy who's making waves in bare knuckle fighting championship because he's also showing something that a lot of people want to see. There is nothing more inspiring to a fight fan sitting, whether it be ringside or nosebleeds, than an awesome comeback.
Yeah, I think the only downfall, because their lead up was kind of cool. We had Tom on the show, Julian went on another show. When they got to the hotel, I mean, not like they were going to brawl, but they exchanged some words in passing. And the weigh-ins were interesting, with those two. And I don't know. I think the build-up got him to brawl that first round, which I know he had no intentions of doing. But you know what? Like you said, it was fight of the night. Tom is, I don't know, Mr. Comeback. He had the fight with Diego, then he fixed everything, and he really boxed Diego up. Now he had the fight with Julian. As much as I would love to see him get other opponents, I feel like I want to see him fight Julian again.
Yeah, that fight, the first thing I noticed that Julian looked just physically stronger, and Tom definitely kept his composure and made it a fight.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Then we had the finals of the lightweight championship. What can we say about this? Johnny Bedford, Reggie Barnett Jr. Really, this was the classic brawler versus technical guy fight. This was it, brawler versus boxer, and I mean from the start of the bell, Bedford knocked Reggie out. I mean, I'm sorry, not out, knocked him down twice in the first round, and I mean that told you everything exactly what the fight was going to be like. And Reggie did a great job trying to work around him in and out, but God Almighty.
Was anybody surprised that as soon as the fight started, they both just started throwing bombs right off the line?
Not at all.
See,
Not
now
at all.
I was surprised.
Not at all.
I thought Reggie was
There
going
was
to
a lot of
circle
heat
out.
there. They had a
Yeah.
lot of heat with each other, like legit.
Did you? Well, did you see the shirt that Reggie
Yes.
Barnett had? That was classic.
Yep.
That was classic. That's going above and beyond kind
What
of
did it
when
say?
it comes to head games and
He ate my sandwich or something.
yeah, and
like
remember
that.
it had those digital tears coming down his
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
I just thought he sold that fight very well. And you know something, it didn't feel manufactured as some of these grudge matches tend to
No.
feel sometimes. Whereas no, they actually started getting that itch, and once that itch wasn't scratched, then the heat started building between them because they really did want to know. Because like you said, it was that quintessential brawler versus the boxer.
Yeah.
They really wanted to know who was going to come out on top. And I've said it before, I've saying it again, broken record every day, pace, pace, pace. Johnny Bedford understands pushing that pace. He's understood it since day one.
The guy doesn't have a pace. It's on the gas all 5 rounds.
Oh,
That's it. His gas
There's no-
tank is.
there's no break. There's no break.
You know how we knew this was going to be good? Because we had them on together. And when we have them on, nothing's scripted. And they made that show. We could have just turned our cameras off and went away. Like they didn't need us. And you know what? I think the day is going to come where at some point they will run it back again. There's no
Come on,
doubt in my mind.
Stitch. Come on, Stitch. We need your 2 cents on this fight, brother.
Well, I'm gonna tell you this. Yeah, that I've worked many fights with Johnny Bedford when he was in the UFC, and that is the way he fights, no doubt about it. But you know, and like when I told Johnny years ago in the UFC, I said, "Look, man, not your racist or anything like that, but you're the toughest white boy I've ever met in my whole life, man." And he looked at me and he took it as a compliment. But in all true sincerity, this kid is as tough as you're gonna get anywhere and everywhere. And you know, I just love Johnny Bedford, you know, and for him to go out there and did what he did, and you know, to go home with a whole bunch of gold around him, I think was a dream come true for him. So, yeah, I like Johnny Bedford, no doubt about it. Just tough kid.
He called for that middle circle multiple times. Like,
Yeah.
come on, come on into my house. This is where we work.
With all the praise.
You know, I'm sorry, I'm sitting ringside with the ringside doctors. I said, here we go, man. That's the mental game right there. And Johnny won the first battle in the mental game by keeping him in the square circle, but he wanted that bonus, you know, and took Reggie out of his game plan.
But don't take, I'm going to tell you something. With all the praise that we're throwing for Johnny Bedford, of course, the last thing I'm going to do is take anything away from the game of Reggie Barnett Jr.
Oh, yeah.
No way.
No, Reggie is an absolute warrior.
Yes,
and
he is.
boy was he made for this sport. Honestly, what happened was just it's the age-old saying, he was the better man that night.
Right.
That night. I mean, Johnny was the better man that night, and that could easily change in their next encounter if they decide to rematch that up. That could easily change.
I think what Reggie endured through the fight, the average man would have been like, I'm done. I'm not getting up. Whatever the case may be.
Out.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
He had zero quit. I think whether he got knocked down twice or 200 times, like he said it, and I think literally he would have had to kill him for him to not get up. Like there was nothing stopping him. And I think if they meet again, I think the second time around, you'll see it. The same Reggie Barnett Jr., but he will implement his exact game plan. And it just makes for it's a good fight again. That's all.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier in the show, you know, skill-wise, Reggie is being the best boxer in bare-knuckle fighting. And taking nothing away from him, you know, like Jeff says, it just, you know, it was Johnny Bedford's night. You know, he's the one that approached it in a mental state and took the advantage right off the bat.
Yeah, well,
you know what, and I'll just add this. You guys have already said it so beautifully, but I will add this is like, you know, in terms of when it comes to that level of competition, it's not so much where people win by miles, it's by inches. And I think that it's just, like you said, his game plan happened to beat Reggie's game plan that night, and that's it. It's nothing to take. It doesn't mean Reggie's bad. It doesn't mean Bedford is always going to beat Reggie, because I just don't, you know, it's just he won by inches, and that's all you need, you know, especially climbing up the ladder at that level. co-main event, we had Dakota Cochran defeated Chris Lieben via unanimous decision. If there was one fight I did not see going to decision, it was that one. It was that one,
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely, man. With that slaughtering that Chris Lieben gave us the last time, no disrespect to his opponent, but that's just what it was the first time out. That was just an all-out slaughter. And when the fight was over, seeing just the amazing sportsmanship and basically gentlemanly, way of handling themselves on social media was just incredible because, Dakota Cochran said, Chris Lieben is the hardest thing I've ever punched in my entire life. And Chris Lieben returns that in kind, saying that Dakota Cochran is one of the hardest hitters I've ever come up against.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. You know what? I'm interested to see Dakota Cochran take a bare knuckle fight with a full camp. So far, he's taken 2 fights on short notice. Oddly enough, both times were replacing Brennan Ward, and now people are coining him the Legend Killer. Like he's
well, look at him. He's taken out 2 UFC legends now.
Yeah, I mean, you can't take anything away from him. He shows up, he's on weight, and there was no trash talk with either one of them leading up. They just, we're coming here, we're going to fight, and that's it.
You know what it is? Because I believe that he's a very humble guy. He's not the one to really kind of get sucked into the complete and total trash talk. He's one of those fighters that likes to do his talking with his fists, which is, in the end, is what we all want to see.
I think both of their... Oh, go ahead, Stitch.
No, it doesn't even look like a fighter. Maybe he's more like the quiet storm. So that's the guy I would see in the bar that's, okay, I'll take him on, and realize that I'm on the ground and he's picking me up.
Yeah, for real. And their press conference, their speeches were identical, said different.
Yeah.
I showed up to fight. He showed up to fight. We're just going to punch each other in the face until somebody wins. There you go.
And that's what it was.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
They delivered. I'm going to tell you, Sam, if there was any kind of hype around their, individual speeches and their individual mantras at not only the press conference, but the weigh-ins, they lived up to the hype.
Yeah, sure did.
One of the things, just real quick, one of the things I said was they reminded me of, a bull in a china shop versus another bull in a china shop. Especially when they kept going across the ring at each other and they would just flurry the hell at each other. Like one would do it, the other would do it, one would do it, the other would do it. But no, man, that was 2 heavy hitters, and
that's an accurate analogy. That's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
And just what it reminded me of: 2 bulls in a china shop coming at each other.
Dakota was getting call-outs on social media before he got his face wiped off. It was insane. You got guys coming out that they want a piece of him. Other legends.
Well, they do now because they're realizing that this guy is more of an all-around fighter than they initially gave him credit for because, he's put himself in these positions with his only bare-knuckle fights, both of them being last-minute replacements. And it's the last-minute replacements that you never really want to rule out because, they're kind of a wild card in the situation because when you were fighting, you weren't preparing for this guy.
Right. Here you go. Quick question. If you had to guess, bare knuckle legend, who called him out first? If you had to take a guess right now, who would you guess? Has fought here and in England.
I already know, legend. So I can't guess.
You can't guess. You already know.
So
is it a Bobby Gunn?
No.
Bobby Gunn.
Take him out of the picture. Who else? Shannon the Cannon. Shannon the Cannon.
Duh! I've only seen that on Facebook. I should have actually said that because I follow Shannon's Facebook profile. Yeah. I definitely like to see that.
That'd be another good fight.
Well, what do you think, Stitch?
Well, hey, match them up. I'll work up. Guaranteed.
That's interesting. I wonder what weight would they fight at. That's interesting. I guess Cochran would have to go up to at least 205.
I think they could do cruiserweight. Yeah. I think that they could do I think they could probably do the cruiserweight limit though.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Shannon's heavyweight, but he hangs around like 225, 230. So he's not.
I think he could get down.
If he had to cut, he'd cut.
Yeah,
he would.
I think he would. And then of course, the main event: Artem Lobov defeats Paulie Malignaggi via unanimous decision. I don't know. What do we say about this fight?
My unpopular opinion. I know people hate it, and I know if you're entitled to your opinion. I mean, we all see everything different. I've watched the fight live, and I've rewatched it a whole bunch of times, and that's why I was digging for the rules. And while I came from MMA, and I absolutely was cheering for Artem, I still believe Paulie won 3 rounds. Unfortunately, I think round 1 and 2 were clear for Paulie. I think round 4 and 5 were clear for Artem. Round 3, I think, is the round in question. That is the round that he took most of the damage in the clinch. But outside of that clinch damage, I think Paulie landed more and cleaner, and he made him miss a lot. So I don't know. I was waiting to hear unanimous draw, honestly. I really thought they were going to draw it to do it again.
I thought it was going to be a split, honestly, the way that it was going. I honestly thought it was going to be a split decision. And while I appreciate your opinion on that, because Paulie definitely, I think he did fantastic for his first outing. It's just unfortunate. But unfortunately, Paulie was stuck in that hype train that had just followed Artem from Jason Knight.
Right.
And for them to live up to that fight was just such an uphill battle. It wasn't impossible, but it sure as hell was improbable for something like that to happen, because Jason Knight is a completely different fighter than Paulie Malignaggi. Jason Knight was all about staying inside that circle and getting his hands dirty. I mean, come on, if there's anyone that ever had the look of a fighter outside of the Diaz brothers, come on. Come on. I mean, Jason Knight, hands down. But you know something?
Nick Diaz.
I honestly believe that I think Nate and Nick Diaz, but I think, honestly, the aggressive pace and the damage shots were on Artem's side for the most part. There were clean shots, but I definitely think Artem got in there and hurt him more. I mean, you saw him in his post-fight interview. I mean, he had a couple gashes on there. He didn't come away unscathed from this in any way, shape, or form. So I'm honestly thinking when it comes to aggressive pace and damage control, I definitely have Artem I would have had Artem by split decision, in my opinion. That's me.
And this goes to show how close the fight was. Because we can have a different opinion, but I'm not mad at your opinion. I could see it. I could see it. Like, none of it. It was just a good fight. I think the way the fight played out, all the lead up to it, and I think it led up to the hype. Anybody who thought Paulie was going to show up and stand in that center circle and brawl is delusional.
No.
He went in and he boxed. He went in and boxed. Artem pushed the pace and brawled. And the best part was, after all that shit, they walked away with respect for each other.
Yeah, and I was right in the center ring working on Artem after the fight. And, that's one of the privileged positions I'm in, where Paulie comes in, puts his arms around him, and apologizes, for everything, and that this is business and what have you not. And I'm listening to all this, and I'm thinking, this is a pretty historical moment. But, getting into the decision, Dave Feldman always has a group meeting with all the fighters. And one of the things he says is, this is not boxing, this is bare-knuckle fighting. Right. And we want you guys to fight. And I think the disadvantage that Paulie had, he came in with the idea of taking it to distance and fighting from the outside and all that. But I think in the eyes of the judges, that was probably the against him when it came to the scoring. So, but nonetheless, he did cross that line, and credibility-wise, it just went up. So he lost no credibility. His name is still intact. He was a great fighter there. He's a great commentator, and he did bare-knuckle fight. So let's see if that opens up the door for more fighters coming in.
Which it will.
Boxers coming into the game.
Oh, what was also impressive was in the short amount of time he had to train. I'm not saying he was winning the exchanges in the clinch, but he definitely worked on how to get out of them with the least amount of damage. You know what I mean? He wasn't winning the exchanges. Artem is a destroyer in the clinch. But he was able to, fiddle his way out, with the exception of that one where he got busted up. So, I mean, I think he did everything right. Training camp was good.
I always said that throughout the whole thing, is if nobody teaches him how to break out of that clinch, then he's in trouble. But from what I understand, Ray Longo worked with him. And that's not a bad guy to have on your side.
Sure isn't.
Yeah, no, I thought I thought Paulie did well, very well for his first bare knuckle outing. I think, like you guys already kind of said, I think he maybe tried to treat it maybe like regular boxing a little too much, and maybe just some of his movements were real similar to like glove boxing versus how they do it in bare knuckle and things like that. But I tell you what, even bigger than this fight and even better than this fight is the the um, the reward from the eyeballs, right? All the eyeballs and all the media and all the fans. There's so many new fans after Saturday night. So much more. The media now is really taking a close look at bare knuckle and what it has to offer, and it's like, holy shit, these guys can really kick some ass and really fight. Before this weekend, it was like it's kind of like this thing on the side that's just kind of been happening, and this really brought it to the forefront of in the media world, right? And God Almighty, man! I mean, I tell you what, I was so impressed. It was an awesome show. I mean, top to bottom, the guys really gave it everything they had, and I think the main event was just a nice icing on the cake. Drew all the eyeballs, and I tell you what, I'm pumped. I'm excited to see where BKFC goes from here. I really am. I'm pumped.
It's
Man.
it's the sky's the limit. Honestly, I mean, look at all the media coverage, the outside of the fight world that we've gotten. I mean, we've been listed in Forbes magazine twice now.
Yeah.
Twice we've been in Forbes magazine, and they believe that our recipe for success is working. In fact, actually, the ending sentence of that is that if Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship was a stock, I'd buy it. And that right,
you and me both, brother.
And if that's a Forbes analyst talking about that, so that tells you right there. The one thing that they mentioned in the most recent article that I really took a shine to is that they are impressed with how our pace of our shows doesn't let up. It's exciting.
Yeah.
There's very few dull moments, if any at all.
Yeah.
Every now and then that's going to happen because, unfortunately, you're going to get some fighters that are going to really, I guess, feel each other out rather than getting in there, even though that Dave, time and time again, stresses the more you fight, the more you get paid. It's that simple. I mean, you want a key to more financial success in the bare knuckle world, get in there and get it done. So that's why I say Jason Knight will always be a rich man with bare knuckle.
You know what else is nice too, playing on what he said, everybody in this call in one capacity or other has been with us since the first show or before. So it's just wild, especially for us. I mean, we were putting stuff out before the first show. It's just wild to see in such a short time frame where it is. Compared to the UFC, obviously the UFC is monstrous now, but I think the pace that BKFC has is light years ahead of where the UFC was, 14 months after it started.
Well, you also have to understand that when the UFC first started, things were so much more conservative.
Right.
Because, the idea of no rules, no gloves back then was really something that was more you saw on the movie screens rather than in real life. As long as it was in a situation where you have Jean-Claude Van Damme and Bolo Young center stage,
good.
We can go ahead and we can handle that. But putting actual human lives in front of bare knuckles and bad intentions with no weight classes and no rules, well, it scared the shit out of so many people at the beginning, and they didn't know how to handle it. And, of course, the politicians took their hand at it. The reason why bare knuckle is lucky on that is because, we've grown. We've evolved past that. MMA has had the right to evolve, and people have said, something, at one point we thought it's violent, but now that it's structured and it's got what it needs, we're a little bit more accepting and a little bit more understanding of other combat sports coming forward. And what they want to do with this is that what they're going to do with everything else. They're going to gauge it, and it's almost like that they're waiting for something catastrophic to happen. And, could it happen? Of course it could. It's combat sports. Anything catastrophic could happen across any combat sports area. I mean, that just will happen. But I don't think it's going to be as catastrophic as some of the other places. You're not going to see a lot of these people who are brain dead, who have, are punch drunk, chronic traumatic encephalopathy and such. I really don't think that you're going to see that. I honestly think that those kind of injuries are so much more prevalent when you put the gloves on.
No doubt.
I agree.
Stitch, final thoughts, man. What are your final thoughts on the show and like the importance of it towards, I guess, the evolution of BKFC?
Yeah, well, I was in Japan. I did a show Wednesday before I did the bare knuckle fights, and people were talking about it, and which really kind of surprised me. But then, I got home and I look at the press conference, and there's so much media. Before, I think it was maybe 5 or 6 journalists before. Now the whole place was packed. But I saw the transition. I was in the UFC. I did the Forrest Bonner. Forrest Griffith fight, and I did this, so I've seen the growth of the company, Bare Knuckle Fights, and, when Dave Feldman called me for the first show, the only reason I went was to see the safety factors of how they were putting this program together, and I liked the safety factors. As a matter of fact, myself, Dan Margliotti, Bill Clancy, Dave Feldman, the Wyoming Commission, we sat down, went over all the rules, and just through our experiences, myself, Dan, and Bill, we made changes for the protection. And there's a rule there that I like that we didn't use there, but I think it's instrumental in the safety of the fighters. Is they have a 30-second rule where if there's a lot of blood, because blood's going to happen, cuts are going to happen, but the referee can call timeout. They'll bring the fighter to me and the doctor, and I have 30 seconds to work on the fighter to see if I can control the bleeding, make sure it's not hampering anything. The doctor makes a decision whether they can continue or not. And if so, then they go out. And if not, then we stop the fight. But, those things right there are what's going to make this game instrumental. But, Dave Feldman and the whole group on the PR basis are doing a tremendous job. And my prediction will be is Eddie Hearn will be contacting Dave if he hasn't already and get him on his own. So watch.
That's where we need to be. That's where we need to be. I totally agree. I honestly believe, as much as I love the pay-per-view team that we have, I honestly believe that the pay-per-view model is kind of a dying animal at one point, and the future of this industry is definitely going to become into monthly streaming subscription services. Yeah. So I definitely think that that's the rate, or the route that we're going to be going. Yeah. So I definitely believe that DAZN was kind of almost tailor-made for what we're giving the fight world. So I couldn't agree with you more, Stitch. I really believe that is where we need to be eventually. And I believe we're going to get there. It's just a matter of time, in my opinion.
It's a if, not when. It's a when, not if. Sorry.
I think so. Right. I tell you what else we all agree on, too, is how great the show was. BKFC 7 was an absolute awesome show. We were here not too long ago talking about the aftermath of BKFC 6, and we thought how great that show was, and here we are again. It just keeps topping itself, man, and congratulations to, you guys, the staff of the show, and, man, from top to bottom. Every single person has made this show so huge, so important, and just make it feel so special. And I was a broken record all weekend, and I was telling everybody just how passionate everybody is. The entire team, everybody involved is just so passionate about the whole thing. And
our team itself should honestly show what kind of product that we have. Yeah. Is that we have got the best of everybody's respected profession in the fight game in the world on one team. Yeah. And we're putting our names on that. We're putting our professional names and stamping them on the BKFC logo because we believe in it. Because a lot of us, definitely, Stitch, you're if anybody's included in this statement, you are. Yeah. We don't like to go ahead and stamp our names lightly to products. We don't.
Right. You're right.
Well, it could do damage if it doesn't work.
Absolutely. I hate to say this. I'm not going to mention names, but look what happened with a former MMA and pancreas legend who decided to take on the presidency of a bare knuckle organization, and unfortunately it went sour. And unfortunately that can happen. The fight world's kind of a crapshoot. Sometimes you come up, you know, all aces, and a lot of the times you actually come up just snake eyes.
Not today.
Not today.
though.
Not
Not
today.
today.
Oh, I said aces. I'm sorry. That's cards. I meant box cars.
There you go.
I meant box.
go.
No. Sometimes you come up box cars, and sometimes you come up snake eyes. That's what I meant.
There you go. Guys, well, we're just about out of time, but thank you so much to our guests, the legendary Stitch. I can't say enough about that man. The awesome ring announcer Jeff Houston, Mr. Live Worldwide, Nick Portella, and myself, Joshua.
And then there's just us.
And there's just us. We're just we're like that, you know. But anyways, guys, we thank you so much for your time, and we appreciate it so much. Again, awesome card. Congratulations to Dave Feldman and his entire crew.
Hold on. Last thought.
One more thing. I got one more thing that I want to throw out there because it's going to be taking place in just a little over 2.5 weeks. Shout out to Mr. Scott Burt and the Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame because the induction ceremony is going to be taking place in 2.5 weeks up there in Belfast, New York, Knuckletown, USA, as it's now known. And I want to give a shout out to all of the fellow inductees, myself included, to the 2019 class. It's just going to be an awesome weekend. It's just going to be it's really cool that the class that we actually have for the class of 2019, and Scott says one of the nicest things about the class is that the majority of the class is actually alive. Because they're usually not, because they're usually, yes, so that's definitely a bonus. So I just wanted to throw out a quick shout out to the Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame induction ceremony taken down July 12th through the 14th, Belfast, New York. It's going to be an awesome time.
There you go. Guys, that's all the time we got. Again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.